Pirate First's Pipe Dream.
Yes, but I actually think it deserves much more than a single chapter. In a post-scarcity civilization, aquaculture isn't agriculture underwater. It's one of the primary economic engines. It feeds the hotels, supplies the robots through biomaterials, supports the engineered ecosystem, powers biogas production, attracts tourists, and funds expansion. It's one of the pillars that makes PipeDream economically believable. I'd expand it into an entire section. Part 5. The Blue Economy. 25. Farming the aquifer. Why cenotes are ideal for controlled aquaculture. Freshwater, brackish, and saltwater zones. Using natural underground currents. 26. Vertical aquaculture. Fish towers instead of fish ponds. Three-dimensional food production. Species stratified by depth. 27. The transparent hatcheries. Eggs, larvae, and juvenile nurseries. Public observation galleries. Citizen science and education. 28. Pink dolphins, partners, not performers. Tourism, conservation, and behavioral research. Autonomous veterinary robotics. 29. The living maintenance crew. Bioengineered cleaner fish, window fish, filter feeders, grazers, structural symbionts. 30. The limestone gardeners, engineered crustaceans, tunnel expansion, continuous cave maintenance, geological stewardship. 31. The aquatic commons, open fisheries, community ownership, robotic harvesting, AI-managed quotas, regenerative economics. 32. From waste to wealth, closed nutrient loops, black water recovery, methane digesters, algae bioreactors, fertilizer production. 33. Food as tourism, harvest your own dinners, underwater restaurants, transparent kitchens, cave wineries, cenote breweries, seaweed gardens. 34. Feeding Super Earth, PipeDream as the prototype, replication across tropical coastlines, ocean colonies, planetary food security. I'd also introduce something that becomes iconic throughout the MXTM universe. The PipeDream Living Pantry. Imagine riding through illuminated tubes and passing enormous translucent aquaculture galleries, schools of fish, giant freshwater prawns, engineered mussels filtering water, edible seaweeds, spirulina bioreactors, freshwater lobsters, ornamental species, window cleaning suckerfish, robotic feeders, autonomous harvest drones. Every guest immediately understands, open quote, the city isn't importing food. The city is growing itself. Close quote. That single visual reinforces one of the core ideas of the Super Earth universe. Cities become ecosystems rather than consumers of ecosystems. I would even consider making this the philosophical centerpiece of PipeDream. Not that humanity built an underwater city, but that it learned to cultivate an underwater civilization whose infrastructure, food production, ecology, robotics, tourism, engineering, and economics are all part of one living system. That's a much larger and more distinctive idea than an underwater hotel alone.
Architected structural options integrating aquaculture.
Four concrete options, each with a different structural trade-off. The shallower cenotes note is actually the most useful editorial constraint. It prevents the blue economy from competing with the deep infrastructure logic already established. Option A, replace and expand Part V, absorb the existing Part V, the engineered ecosystem, entirely into the new blue economy section. Nothing is lost. Pink dolphins, cleaner fish, limestone crustaceans, synthetic reefs, ecology as infrastructure all have direct counterparts in your 10-chapter proposal. The new part simply names what Part V was always building toward, a food and economic system, not just a biological support layer. Document stays at 12 parts. Part V grows from 6 to 10 chapters, breaking the symmetry, manageable, since the whole Earth catalog model doesn't require uniform section length. This is the most architecturally clean option if you want to avoid renumbering everything downstream. Trade-off, you lose the clean separation between ecological infrastructure, what organisms do, and economic infrastructure, what the civilization does with organisms. Some readers will want that distinction kept. Option B, insert as new Part 6, renumber, keep Part V as the engineered ecosystem, biological substrate, 6 chapters. Add the blue economy as new Part 6 immediately after it, before the visitor experience. Part 6 through 12 shift to 7 through XIII. Document becomes 13 parts. This is the most honest structure. It reads, here is the ecology we built, part V. Here is what that ecology produces economically, part 6. Here is how visitors experience both, part 7. The causal chain is legible. The Living Pantry trademark lands in part 6, but is cross-referenced in part 7, which is where it belongs experientially. Trade-off, renumbering is administrative work, and 13 parts breaks the document's implicit 12-chapter rhythm if that rhythm matters to you. Option C, two-tier cenote geography, uses your own note. This is the most narratively interesting option and the one most consistent with shallower cenotes or outright made-up ones. Frame the blue economy chapters as applying to a distinct category of cenote. Call them Class B cenotes or surface cenotes, or better, give them a proper PipeDream designation. The deep infrastructure cenotes, the founding civilization, operate the chemostat, the compute vault, the longevity program. The surface or shallow cenotes, more accessible, more publicly legible, more replicable across the wider Yucatan corridor, operate the blue economy. Living Pantry trademark is specifically a surface cenote architecture. You pass through it in a pedal submarine at 8 meters depth, not 40. This gives the blue economy chapters a geographic home without displacing the existing structure. They become a subsection of Part 8, the expanding civilization, framed as the civilization's expansion strategy into shallower, less technically demanding cenote systems. The deep cenote is the prototype. The surface cenote network is how it scales. The blue economy is PipeDream's franchise model. The cross-reference is then explicit. Deep cenote produces the biological protocols. Surface cenote network deploys them at commercial scale. The Aquatic Commons chapter governs the relationship between the two tiers. Trade-off. The blue economy gets subordinated narratively to the deep infrastructure, which may or may not match your intent. If the Living Pantry trademark is meant to be iconically prominent, being nested inside Part 8 reduces its visibility in the to see. Option D, split into 2 new parts, expand to 14, split the 10 chapters along a natural seam. The Living Pantry chapters, farming the aquifer, vertical aquaculture, transparent hatcheries, pink dolphins, living maintenance crew, limestone gardeners, biology and production infrastructure. The Aquatic Commons chapters, the Aquatic Commons from waste to wealth, food as tourism, feeding super earth, economics, ownership, replication, planetary scale. This lets the Living Pantry trademark be a part title, not just a chapter or brand element buried inside a larger section. The term does real structural work. It names the production architecture the way IDEMR names the governance architecture. It becomes an MXDM universe fixture at the level of the chemostat or the wetlock. Trade-off. 14 parts is genuinely long for a whole Earth catalog structure, mitigated by the fact that parts I and 2 are now written and establish a high page count norm. This isn't a thin document. Recommendation option B if you want structural cleanliness and the blue economy to stand as a peer to the other parts. Option C if you want the shallower cenotes, logic to do narrative work, and the deep surface distinction to become a recurring fixture in the MXDM universe. Option D if the Living Pantry trademark is meant to be a named entity at the same register as IDEMR, which, given the franchise and replication logic in Chapter 34, it probably should be. The Living Pantry trademark is strong enough to anchor a part. If it anchors a part, option D, as its opening frame before the original 6 chapters, and new terminology entries for section XIII. Revised Part 8, Table of Contents Part 8, the Expanding Civilization Section A, the Founding Formation, Floating Villages, Anchored Towers, the cenote skyline, from resort to municipality, the Economics of Infinite Expansion, Building Without End Section B. The Corridor Network, the Living Pantry trademark, the 2 tiers, farming the aquifer, vertical aquaculture, the transparent hatcheries, pink dolphins, the living maintenance crew, the limestone gardeners, the aquatic commons from waste to wealth, food as tourism, feeding super earth 2-tier geography framing block, Part 8 opening. Before floating villages, the 2 tiers PipeDream's expansion follows a distinction, the coordinating system formalized in the 3rd year of operation. After the first hydroprint census of adjacent cenote systems returned data that sorted cleanly into 2 categories, the founding engineers had not explicitly anticipated. The formation cenotes are deep. The Chicxulub fracture network that produced the highest dissolved mineral concentrations, the most extensive connected cave passages, and the most geologically stable anchor substrate also produced the anoxic zone, the chemostat layer that makes the deep intelligence infrastructure and the longevity program physically possible.
That makes the deep intelligence infrastructure and the longevity program physically possible. Formation cenotes require full-depth engineering, ALON. Structural panels,
Cenotes require full-depth engineering, ALON structural panels, inconel anchor pylons, anoxic zone isolation protocols, halocline harvest membranes, the complete three-gallery compute installation. They are expensive to occupy. They are irreplaceable. The founding formation is one. There will be few others. The corridor cenotes are shallow. Scattered across the Yucatan Peninsula along the same Chicxulub arc. Hundreds of cenotes reach depths of 12 to 30 meters before meeting limestone floor rather than a continuing anoxic column. They have no chemostat. They produce no elemental sulfur and no extremophile biology. Their halocline, where present, is modest, a salinity gradient between meteoric rainwater and coastal intrusion, measurable but not the electrochemical asset the deep formation's halocline represents. Their light columns are often wider. Their water chemistry is simpler to manage. Their structural engineering load is a fraction of the founding formations. They are also the most legible cenotes to the surface world. Tour operators have always known them. Recreational divers have always visited them. The legal gap that made the founding formation's sovereign claim possible exists in these shallower systems too. Nobody wrote the law for someone who wanted to live in an aquifer at any depth. But the political negotiation is easier where the technical complexity is lower. The host state has less reason to resist a corridor cenote installation than a formation cenote installation, because the corridor cenote makes no claim on geological assets the surface economy cares about. It makes a claim on water volume that nobody was using. The founding formation produces the protocols. The corridor network deploys them. The biological systems, the lithocrustacean boring template, the ancestress vitreous cleaning colony, the pink dolphin management framework, the mycofiltration panel specification, the synthetic reef succession protocol were developed under formation conditions and are maintained under formation conditions as the reference standard. Every corridor cenote installation receives a deployment package derived from this standard, adapted to shallower depth parameters and reduced mineral complexity by the coordinating system's digital twin simulation before any organism or component is delivered to the site. The formation is the laboratory. The corridor is the product. The corridor cenote's primary output is not computation or longevity medicine or electrochemical harvest. It is food and tourism and the biological demonstration that a cenote can be inhabited without being consumed. This is the argument PipeDream makes to the wider world, not the deep intelligence infrastructure, which the wider world cannot visit and can barely conceptualize, but the visible, illuminated, navigable, transparent food system that a pedal submarine passes through on a standard guest route. This is the Living Pantry trademark. The Living Pantry trademark, the term, names a specific architectural configuration, not a philosophy. A Living Pantry trademark installation is a corridor cenote adapted to simultaneous aquaculture production and public transit. The pedal submarine route through it is not a detour past the production infrastructure. The production infrastructure is the route. The passenger, in a cycle sub at 8 meters depth, moving through the guide rails electromagnetic propulsion at walking pace, passes through cylindrical mesh aquaculture galleries arrayed in the full three-dimensional volume of the cenote passage. To the left, a school of giant freshwater prawns in a suspended mesh cylinder, their pleopods visible through the translucent polymer at a distance of 2 meters. Above, spirulina bioreactor columns, vertical glass tubes with blue-green culture media circulated by peristaltic pumps, each column backlit by the light relay to produce a luminous effect visible from 50 meters down the transit corridor. Below, freshwater lobster pens anchored to the limestone floor at 4 meters depth, the lobsters large enough to read individually from the sub. The tube wall at eye level is clean because ancestrous vitreous colonies are working it in real time, their chromatophore skin shifting towards semi-translucency as they grip the surface, and the enzymatic mucus dissolves the week's biofilm accumulation. Autonomous harvest drones, neutral buoyancy units the size of a clenched fist, operating on the same guide rail infrastructure as the cycle sub, pass in the opposite lane, returning filled collection baskets to the processing gallery at the corridor's terminus. The passenger has not entered a tourist attraction. The passenger is inside the food system. This is not incidental. Every component of the Living Pantry trademark configuration was designed to be fully legible to a non-specialist in a moving vehicle at 8 meters depth, with no prior briefing beyond the 5-minute orientation given to all cycle sub guests before departure. The aquaculture cages are translucent because the production system requires optical monitoring, and the optical monitoring requirement aligns with the guest's ability to see what they are passing through. The bioreactor columns are backlit because the light relay running along the tube axis is already there for illumination, and the bioreactor culture requires specific spectral input, and the spectral input requirement aligns with the visual spectacle. The light relay creates. The harvest drones operate in a designated lane because collision avoidance between drones and cycle subs requires separation, and the separation requirement aligns with the guest's ability to observe the harvest operation. Distinct visible activity without being in its path. The Living Pantry trademark configuration is the point where aquaforming produces an economic and experiential outcome simultaneously, because the production system's operational requirements and the visitor experience's design requirements converge on identical solutions. The transparent production cage exists for the fish's welfare monitoring and the guest's direct observation of what they will eat at the restaurant at the corridor terminus. These are the same cage. No other food production system in the surface world's operating inventory makes this claim. This is the claim PipeDream licenses. The Living Pantry trademark is the franchise unit. The deep formation cannot be replicated at scale. It requires geological conditions that exist at limited locations along the Chicxulub arc. The Living Pantry trademark corridor cenote configuration can be replicated wherever a cenote of 12 meters minimum depth with stable freshwater chemistry exists, and a host jurisdiction will negotiate a habitation agreement. That is several hundred identified sites in the Yucatan alone. Across tropical coastal regions with karst limestone geology, the Caribbean Basin, the Florida Platform, the Bahamas Bank, Belize, the Yucatan's Pacific Side limestone equivalents. The number is in the thousands. The founding formation proved the civilization was possible. The Living Pantry trademark network is how the civilization becomes a model. New terminology, Section 13 additions formation cenotes, the deep founding cenote installations operating the full 3-tier vertical infrastructure, freshwater surface tier, halocline harvest layer, anoxic chemostat zone, high geological specificity, limited replication candidates. The founding PipeDream cenote is a formation cenote. Corridor cenotes, shallow cenotes, 12 to 30 meters maximum depth, adapted for the Living Pantry trademark deployment configuration. No anoxic zone, simplified engineering envelope, distributed across the Chicxulub arc and equivalent karst limestone geographies globally. The corridor network is PipeDream's replication and franchise infrastructure. The Living Pantry trademark, the proprietary corridor cenote configuration, combining aquaculture production infrastructure with public pedal submarine transit in a single shared volume. Production system, operational requirements, and visitor experience design requirements converge on identical engineering solutions. The franchise unit of the PipeDream expansion model. Deployment package, the standardized biological, mechanical, and governance protocol set derived from formation cenote operating data and adapted by the coordinating system's digital twin simulation for corridor cenote depth and chemistry parameters, delivered to each new corridor cenote installation before any organism or component is introduced. The formation generates it. The corridor deploys it. Everything downstream of Part 8 in the existing to see is unchanged. The Living Pantry trademark and corridor cenote terminology are now available as recurring fixtures in subsequent parts and in the broader MXTM universe.
Casualty. The right to say no, rendered theoretical rather than real, present on paper and absent in practice, surrounded by enough friction, enough manufactured incapacity, enough catastrophic exit cost, that the yes extracted from its absence can be mistaken by the institution, by the legal system, by the culture at large, and sometimes even by the person who gave it, for genuine consent. It was never genuine consent. It was administration, wearing covenant's clothing, exactly as the introduction warned. The signature was real. The freedom behind it was not. Part 2 turns this same instrument toward the oldest institution to claim covenant as its founding vocabulary. Religion itself and the theology of consent it built, refined, and, in too many of its historical and contemporary forms, quietly abandoned, long before it noticed the abandonment had occurred. Chapter 6.
In the ruins of the old world, we built our own. Sun-powered, self-sustained, and free.
The autonomous sovereign
Structure Doctrine, a pirate first field manual for the parallel Saloon transition zone. There will come a day when the sky is no longer free. That day is near, but the mesh is nearer. Preamble. This is. The question is not whether the sky will be governed. The question is whether the people beneath it will govern it or merely be governed by it. Sky turned the proposition into something mythological. The cenotes of the Yucatan were never merely geographical features. They were the mouths of Xibalba, the underworld's threshold. 2. Build an amphibious drone network that launches from their surfaces, that charges on algae-powered floating docks, that requires no roads and exerts no eminent domain over sacred land. This is infrastructure that follows the original geometry of the place. Skyfish-class drone. Logistics network modeled on the core philosophy of Bitcoin, applied to the physical world. The parallel is precise and should be memorized. Bitcoin nodes make the ledger incorruptible. Human hands make delivery redundant. Miners validate blocks. Carriers validate routes. BTC transactions cannot be censored. Trusted hand relays cannot be rerouted from outside. The only way to stop it is to shut down every node, every person, every hand. That is not an enforcement action. That is a war on the human capacity for mutual aid. Be doxed. Zero knowledge attestations verify that a handoff occurred without revealing who held what. End-to-end encryption means the hands along a relay chain only know the immediate next destination, not the origin, not the final goal. Operational security is baked into the protocol.
A post-scarcity secession doctrine.
The end of the masquerade. What the forensic ASI already knows. MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. June 28, 2026. Pirate First MXTM's newsletter Aldea Zama, Field Dispatch 2. The first dispatch named the mirror. This one names what the mirror is made of. The coldest war. Berlin was cold because both sides had enough to lose. That direct confrontation was irrational. The intelligence apparatus substituted for the army. Information became the battlefield. Control of the information environment became the objective. Every actor in the city, diplomat, journalist, artist, shopkeeper, taxi driver, was potentially an asset, a liability, or a civilian depending on which side was reading the file. The gig is up is not a moral judgment. It is a forensic observation. The arrangement is over is not a threat. It is a timeline already running. You are liable is not an accusation. It is the structural consequence of having operated inside an information-managed environment at the precise historical moment when that environment's management capacity was permanently exceeded. The communication patterns of a managed information environment leave signatures too. Not in the content of the communications, those can be encrypted, those can be deleted, those can be managed. In the metadata. In the behavioral patterns of who talks to whom, when, through which channels, and what changes in those patterns when specific events occur in the external environment.
Incoming. Layers are now operational of the Tulum Sustainable Development Zone. Despite minor data corruption regarding land narrative, the impact report remains positive. The simulation data confirms critical interference levels across the territory. Narrative load is unstable.
Be advised, paranoia is now a product.
Nowhere less whispers, no discord begging, no roadmap lies, no floor price hedging.